We power about 5,000 firms. We can see who's growing fast. We can see who's not growing fast. And what I can tell you is that a lot of our fastest growing advisors are using YouTube as their primary mechanism to get in front of new clients. We have a few that are using social media. So they're like pretty active on X, some that are heavy on LinkedIn, starting to see some that are actually doing decent volume from TikTok.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Next Mile. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder at Milemarker. And today I'm joined by Jason Wenk. If you've been living under a rock and you don't know who he is, Jason is the founder and CEO of Altruist, and he is a quasi-retired ultramarathon runner. Jason, thanks for joining the show, man.
My pleasure. It's awesome to catch up. And, quasi-retired, I have no intention of ever doing an ultramarathon ever again. So you might catch me running 26.2 miles, but not 50 or 100.
Yeah, no more 50 or 100 milers. I've never understood that the people who are you're just signing up for punishment, right? 100 miles or 50 miles is crazy. My father-in-law does those. And every time I'm always amazed. And he's in his 60s and he still runs 50 or 100 mile races, which I think is wild.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a NF1 in my own personal bias, but I think that I love doing really hard things. Like, I think it's just interesting to see what you're capable of, whether it's your work or a jog, or I'm like known to be at like a industry conference and all of a sudden someone will want to have a pull-up contest. And I'm like, that seems like a good idea. Let's go do that. So just being competitive and like wanting to do hard things is fun to be like very intellectually and physically interesting. And doesn't mean I'm good at a lot of stuff, but I like doing the hard stuff, which is what most ultramarathoners or marathoners, if they don't like the hard stuff, they're not going to sign up.
I think that's well stated, man, because it is beyond physical training. It's so much about mental stuff and the ability to just withstand it all. So well stated. All right. So Jason, I ask every guest who comes on the show the same first question, and I want to ask you it as well. Hundreds of these conversations on air, off air. I found everybody has their own unique path to this industry. Some people, that path might be traditional in the sense that they followed family footsteps and maybe their parent was in this or a grandparent was in it. A lot of people didn't even know this industry existed, and they might have a whole pseudo career and then they come into this industry through the side door years into their path. But whether your path is traditional or untraditional, I found everybody has what we call a money moment. And that's a moment in your life where the light bulb clicks on and you go, oh, this is it. This is how I want to spend my time. So for you, what was that money moment that led to you sitting in the chair you're in right now, having this conversation with me?
Awesome question. So I'll go way back, and it's a memory I have that had nothing to do necessarily with my interest in this industry, but it was like my first money moment where I kind of like really thought hard about money. And so growing up, I never had to go without food. I had a very hardworking mother in particular, and she would do anything she possibly could to take care of her 3 kids. But we didn't have a lot, like we kind of had enough. And I remember that back then, I was a child of the 80s and 90s, a common way you could still pay for things at stores with checks. And I remember wanting something from a store once and my mom saying, oh, we don't have any money for that. We don't have any money for that. And I said to her, I was like, why don't you just write a check? Because like in my mind, if you needed more money than you had on you, could just write a check. Checks were like magic money machines or something like that. And I remember her saying something effective like, I could write a check and let it bounce, but we could then maybe, like, she literally was like, I'm willing to write a bad check to get this thing. And I remember having this conversation, like, what does that mean? And like, how do checkbooks work and checking accounts and this whole kind of thing. And I remember like at that point, I was probably a middle school or something. And I just remember thinking to myself, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I never want to have to worry about money. And I really don't want other people to have to worry about money like this. Anyway, I'd say that was like my first money moment. Obviously, like I then went out middle school, high school. I was a pretty talented student and in particular did well in math and science. It was in a kind of advanced math and science program, studied computer science in university. So never really intended on using that to get into finance necessarily. But my first internship opportunity was at Morgan Stanley, not as a financial advisor, but to just work like back then you'd call it like in their IT department or something. Essentially, they would call folks analysts, and they were just building productivity software. And that was my very first exposure to like wealth management or investment management. And I never left. I've been doing this now for over half my life. And now I get a lot of time. A lot of the work I get to do now is there's some level of cross-reference back to that very first money moment, being a naive kid, not really knowing how even a checkbook worked.
Man, what a story. What a great story. That's super cool to go from that moment of understanding what a bounce check is to you're sitting inside of Morgan Stanley, helping them try and build software to move all kinds of money around and handle infrastructure. That's pretty cool. All right. I want to talk a little bit about before you started Altruist, you've built two RIAs. I think one of them was RIA TAMP. I mean, you can define it, but you built two RIAs. A lot of the people who listen to this are trying to build RIAs. And a lot of the questions we get on air, off air, is all about how to grow an RIA. And I think you were really great at this. I think you've had a lot of really smart tactics about digital marketing, growth marketing, all of these types of things, and applied them to your RIAs. So I'd love to just have you riff on your experience of building those firms before you built Altruist, and then we'll talk a lot about Altruist as well.
Sure. Yeah. I just had to walk down memory lane on this. I forget which firm it was. I saw online one of the kind of fast growing RIAs. They just posted a thing about their Inc. 500 rating. And they said, it's like, hey, here's where we were. And we're the fastest growing RIA in the entire industry. In fact, I think we're the fastest growing company in all of financial services. And their 3-year growth rate was 12,000%. And I was just using my memory. I go, I'm pretty sure we grew faster than that. And I knew we were in the Inc. 500 at my last company. And so I went back and looked it up and I was like, oh, sure enough. Yeah, we were at 13,000 something, 13,300 or something. So I made sure I screenshotted it and said, hey, welcome to the 12,000% club. And maybe one day you can get the 13,000% club. But so to the best of my knowledge, I kind of then queried the Inc. stuff. And I think, my last company, I think it was the fastest growing RIA like ever in the history of RIAs. Certainly, whoever it was this year, that was at 12,000. We were a bit faster. Now those rankings can be a little bit tongue in cheek because the criteria is the first year, it's based on 3-year revenue growth, and the first year revenue has to be $100,000 or higher. So you could be like, maybe that first year that you're measuring against, you're at $100,001, right? And then from there you grow to whatever, 10 million in revenue, and it's 10,000%, which obviously is very different than if your firm's already 2 million of revenue and you grow 10,000. It's just very much more challenging to get these like giant growth rates, which are already big. But suffice to say, we grew pretty well. So I'll go to the first RA. So when I first left Morgan Stanley, I started a little website that helped people manage their 401k. And I wasn't an RIA. I wasn't licensed. I didn't work with consumers. I thought I could just build a website that you could pick where you worked, fill out basically like a risk questionnaire, and it would then tell you, here's how you should allocate your money. And then every month it would send you an email if there's any changes you should make. And it's a pretty straightforward business. This is early 2000s. And you basically have the internet just starting to blow up. Google was just launching. So you had these search engines and nobody really knew how to use them yet. And paid advertising was like incredibly effective. You could basically bid like 1 penny for certain keywords. So I was able to drive a lot of traffic to that site, even with a low conversion rate, like 1% to 2%. I was able to get like a killer ROI, right? So I give people like a 30-day trial, and then like first month payment fully, like it was profitable already, right? And then as many months as it stayed on, you could create a pretty good LTV ratio here. But what I learned was that after a certain number of months, people would churn out. They didn't want to just pay their monthly subscription because the boring advice was just keep doing exactly what you're doing and change nothing, And that felt like not even worth $20 a month or whatever it was. But a lot of folks would say, hey, I'd love more help. Could you help me with my other accounts or my other assets? Like I could really use more than just like a monthly email. And a lot of these people had a decent chunk of money. So the idea was like born of, hey, let's start helping people with actually manage your money. Went down this whole rabbit hole of like, how do you do that? And figured out how to join an independent broker dealer. That was very short-lived because they had a lot of problems with my digital marketing. BDs today are maybe more friendly. They were really afraid of like online marketing back then. So I went full RIA in 2004, launched my first RIA, which was called Retirement Wealth Advisors. And the name was because that first business, which helped people with 401ks, like the majority of people who were signing up for that subscription service were actually people like in their 50s. And they were going online and searching for ways to help with their 401k because in their minds, they were already reasonably close to retirement. And the 401k was most of their largest single asset. You looking at demographics back then, you had baby boomers work in that call like right around 50 to 55, the oldest one. So I was like, hey, look, we're going to have a 20 plus year run of a huge amount of wealth coming into this space. So retirement wealth it was. And Retirement Wealth was basically built two ways: digital marketing, but all organic. I didn't do paid for Retirement Wealth. And then local seminar marketing. Just the math of seminars still worked really well. But I only did the seminars for maybe 2 or 3 years. And then the digital marketing just was so much more effective that I went to 100% digital. So that was Retirement Wealth, and it went pretty well. We grew the firm from basically zero. Yeah, I had no like family money, no senior partner. Like literally it was bootstrapped. And I don't know that I recommend this for other people, but most entrepreneurs are heavily biased towards optimism. I never really worried about failure. Like, what did I have to lose? I was in my early 20s. And so I racked up, I took every penny I made and saved from Morgan Stanley and took every credit card I had and maxed them all out and basically spent through every penny I had, was living in my overdraft in my checking account, like literally having to go to bed hungry so that I could make sure that the business would be okay. And I had a young child, make sure my kid was okay. But maybe that helped me with my ultra marathon, keeping my weight low. But nonetheless, like these were the early sacrifices to make it work. But it worked. So from nothing to a few $100 million in assets, and did really well. Hired a small team. So I was always like pretty big on efficiency, wrote a lot of my own software. And that was the Retirement Wealth era. That was like 2004 to about 2010, pretty rapid build there. By then, I started getting a lot of inbounds from other advisors. I was asked by TD Ameritrade to speak at their, back then, they called it, it wasn't Link back then, but whatever their annual conference was called. And they asked me to do a session around like how I'd grown so fast. Basically, the wholesaler, sales rep that we worked with, they're like, hey, did you buy another firm? Like, how are you growing so fast? Because we have to keep in mind that going from like zero to a few $100 million in the early 2000s, given the market was 70% lower than it is today, it was a lot harder. Like it'd be like going from 0 to 2 billion in 6 years in today's dollars. So it was unusual. And they then prompted an invite. You can still find the old article. I don't know if I've ever met Tim Welsh before, but I still have a bone to pick with him because I spoke at that conference, standing room only, maybe a couple hundred people in the ballroom in San Diego. And I shared legitimately everything exactly how I did it. Here's exactly how I was creating blog content. Here's exactly how I would craft like the copy. Here's exactly how I do my YouTube channel. Here's exactly how I would do my CTAs. Here's exactly how I'd run my appointments. Here's how I charge for financial planning. I ran through the whole thing. And I remember like an article in one of the industry journals came out, and Tim, who God bless him, probably, I'm sure a great guy, but he puts in there some quote from him was like, there's no way this is actually working, because if it did, he would never tell everybody what he's doing, type of thing. And I'm like, man, what a strange thing. Like, obviously, I think our generation is a lot of build in public people, and we're all pretty open about how we do what we do. And we all have an abundance mindset, and we share, and we love celebrating everybody else's wins. But that was like the time when I did that all of a sudden I had like hundreds of advisors, basically between the article written about the way I was growing and then the people who were at the conference. And it dawned on me, most of them, what they were asking is like, hey, how could we plug into your system? Like thinking it was like a system, or can I buy your system? Like, I'm not selling a system type of thing. Right. But certainly I realized like, if I really want to impact more people, going B2B to C provides a lot more leverage than if I try to win hand-to-hand combat and build this like monstrous independent firm. So that was the Retirement Wealth era. I moved to California in 2008. And so when Retirement Wealth was still it was growing, it was all virtual. So I could live anywhere I wanted to and work with clients wherever I wanted to. And I was very early to being able to be pretty authentic. Like I didn't have to dress up or go to an office. I was wearing whatever, shorts and t-shirts. And this was like 2007, 8, 9, right? Before most people were, because I didn't have to. I didn't have Zoom back then. Most of the virtual meetings were just phone calls. Yeah. Sometimes with a screen share, I'd use one of the screen sharing apps so I could like share a screen, but they didn't even know what I looked like other than like a photo they saw on the internet. But like that little moving to California, I took a little hiatus from, I started just sending all the leads to other advisors, 2 other advisors in particular that worked at the company, become great friends with them. And that gave me like the headspace to think about what to do next. And I started ideating what became the TAMP that we referred to, which we called Formula Folios. And so I'll pause here, but if there's any questions or dig deeper, but like, the primary marketing, I mean, for what it's worth, like the thing that worked better than anything else was I wrote long form blog posts and did long form videos on YouTube around how annuities worked. So if somebody wants to ever look back in the time machine, what was Jason doing? I built just like some basic software to test various annuity contracts. The idea came because when I was doing the local seminars, I'd have people that come in and they'd be like, so-and-so is trying to sell me this annuity. Is it any good? So-and-so is trying to sell me this. Is it any good? And And I was kind of like, I'd go online and you'd look and you couldn't find anything other than a prospectus for the VA. There was not really anything out there. And I just thought there's got to be other people with these same questions. And what if I just created the content? And I'm telling you, like, I wrote the first blog post and recorded the first video, and my life completely changed. And it happened lightning fast. So now I see all these people doing like YouTube videos, and I'm like, I showed my wife one of my old YouTube videos from like the late 2008 or 9 or something. And it was comical. We're both just dying laughing. Like, I look like a complete idiot. I'm much younger, obviously. Terrible lighting, terrible audio. And now obviously a lot of people are doing YouTube, and then I was doing YouTube 18, 17 years ago, but the traffic was there. Like, people would do the search. I would be number one. And like you search for any annuity contract back in the day, and I owned it. Like, my blog had all that. And as soon as they started surfacing videos, I owned all the videos. I put my videos on YouTube and Vimeo, and I only had to write a dozen because I only focused on like the top selling products: fixed annuities, fixed index annuities, variable annuities. And it was like business, like raining down. Like, we could just do, like, it was insane actually, right? Like, how much volume was coming in and how easy it was actually, because these people actually trusted me as like an authority because I was being very transparent. Here's how these work. Here's where they're good. Here's where they're not. Like, and then my CTO was very simple. Hey, look, if you want to know if this is good for you or just broadly, like what you should be doing financially, you can click here and you can schedule some time. And myself or someone on my team will take 30 minutes, no cost, no obligation, and better understand your situation and help point you in the right direction, right? And that help point you in the right direction became like one of our big, like magical CTA A/B tests. If it was a free consultation or a free phone call or this or that other thing, all of the response rates totally sucked. But when we started saying, click here, chat, it will help point you in the right direction, it almost felt, hey, we're just going to help tell you where to go, but we're not going to try to sell you anything. And that was that. So that was the retirement wealth era.
Man, that's crazy. Okay. My big question is, it seems like one of the biggest impetus, it was obviously a formula for the success there, but the formula was openly share and publicly share about education and content that was working. And then I would say you arbitrage like this digital thing. Probably a lot of people were just doing referrals or just doing seminars or whatever it was. And you found, hey, that there's an opportunity for digital stuff. I think you guys are doing this today still with Altruist. We'll kind of skip forward a little bit to talk about Altruist, because I think you guys are a marketing machine as well. But I'm curious, like, what opportunities for arbitrage are you seeing now? Because I think blogging, it feels super hard. Like, SEO is all in flux right now because of what's going on with AI. More people are using ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever instead of Googling things. Google's got its own AI summary when it comes up first. So when you look out at the market today, and, if you were sitting in that retirement wealth era, what are some of the opportunities for digital stuff to create traffic and volume? Because I think that's really what everybody is asking, is how do I get attention and traffic to what I am trying to tell people? The common refrain is say something valuable, which I think, that's good. Let's assume you have something valuable to say. Where are the opportunities for ARB now?
Yeah, I think so. Ironically, not much changes. I think it's interesting how times change, but tactics largely. So, for example, I mean, there's people out there that are just killing it doing seminars. They're pulling in hundreds of millions a year of new client assets, doing seminars locally. They might be doing it in different ways. Some people are doing multi-day classes at a local college. Others are doing old school, like vacant surf and turf, whatever, like seminars, dinner seminars. Look, if someone's executing at a pretty high level, whatever the tactic is, that what was working 20 years ago still works today. That blog and YouTube channel that I did, I branded it actually as Annuity Gator. It was a corny name back then, but actually that's now owned and run by two good friends of mine, Javon and Fernando. It's still in existence today. Someone can go to annuitygator.com. They can see it. I think, I don't want to like overspeak, so these guys can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think they drive probably close to $1 billion a year of new business from annuity reviews, data, and YouTube videos, right? This notion that like somehow things don't work anymore. I mean, like the same stuff. In fact, it works even better. When I was doing it back in the day, I remember the very first blog post and video I ever did, we did $69 million of new assets under management in the first 12 months from that single blog post, like as a source, right? And I wouldn't be shocked if that same post is still driving volume for these guys, many years later. I think they've recut most of my videos, but they're killing it and great entrepreneurs.
Oh, man.
So I think there's a lot of value there. I think it depends on your market, how much SEO is really hurting you. Like if your target market was someone who's whatever, I'd say under age 50 in their career, they're using AI a lot. They have the ChatGPT app on their phone, yeah, you've probably been impacted a little bit, but those people who are still retirement focused, probably not. My mom doesn't know what ChatGPT is. So I think her generation they've heard of AI, of course, but they're not like using it at the same rate as my kids that are in their early 20s. I think that like understanding your market and like where they are, I think the mediums evolve over time, but not a lot's changed. We have a really interesting vantage point now at Altruist. We power about 5,000 firms. We can see who's growing fast. We can see who's not growing fast. And what I can tell you is that a lot of our fastest growing advisors are using YouTube as their primary mechanism to get in front of new clients. We have a few that are using social media. So they're like pretty active on Twitter, aka X, some that are heavy on LinkedIn, starting to see some that are actually doing decent volume from TikTok. So look, there's places you can go where people are and they're doing okay. Referrals is still actually a thing. Like it does drive growth. But the ones who are like, if you see like the light up your scoreboard's going to get somebody's attention, like I'll see those people and I'll often have to ask our sales, hey, can you intro me to this firm? Because what they're doing is remarkable. And a lot of times it's one or two things that they're doing. But right now, YouTube's like right up there. That being said, like, I'm not sure how I feel about that, because the downside to that is that everybody's heard the YouTube stories now from like the top handful of advisors using it. And what'll happen there is the exact same thing that happened to seminars. Seminars back in the day worked so well until there was 10 people in the same town giving the same presentation. And all of a sudden the invitations started to have less of a pull because everybody had seen that message before. And all of a sudden being the trusted voice of the community, like you weren't, because there's 12 other voices. And then what happened was like there was some slimy, very, commission hungry, non-fiduciary advisors that were using that tactic because it worked so well to now do really crappy work for people in the community. And it made everybody guilty by association. And so I think that inevitably that will happen with YouTube. There's like enough people that are doing remarkable volumes of business, 1 to 2 billion per year of new business just from YouTube at a single firm level. But anybody can go out there and now basically reverse engineer the formula. Like the content's not protectable, like when to take Social Security, when to take your pension, what are some of the top mistakes people make, how to avoid taxes on whatever this or that or the other thing. So what'll happen is people just reverse engineer. They'll look at your channels and go, okay, here's the top content. You can use AI to get transcripts now of every single thing. Like the cost to shoot good videos and edit post-production is like very minimal using, again, certain tools that almost can be out of the box, like really good quality. Any of the leading LLMs can effectively be your editorial content team. And you can probably be 95% as good as the people who've been doing it for a long time. And you can now rapidly produce videos. In fact, if you don't even like doing it, you can actually have an AI avatar that is largely indistinguishably different than a human. You would probably not know if they were actually a real person or not. So someone could just flood the market and be like, I'm going to have a channel and I'm going to get 1,000, I'm going to play catch up and get 1,000 videos online in the next, 3 months. I'm not saying they should, but the reality is this is what will happen. Then you're going to get some people out there who are like, what I sell pays a 10% commission. This person's over here charging 1% a fee. So they're just going to have more resources, whether you like it or not. Like the person who's selling the more commission-oriented products, like they will have far more resources than the fee-based folks. So they'll be able to then be like, I'm going to now do paid. And every time they see your video, they're going to see my video right next to it. And I'm going to have 10 times your budget. And so it's just going to be one of these things where I think what we have to kind of be thoughtful about with any form of marketing is that once something works really good, everybody hears about it. And how defensible is it really? So then it becomes down to more, how good are you delivering? And this is where I think things get interesting. And if I think about like Altruist, and if you see my content, a lot of it's around driving better outcomes for clients. I'll talk about why fractional shares, why tax loss harvesting, why individual securities versus funds and ETFs. And a lot of it's because in a world where it'll be nearly impossible to be different and unique based on your content, what you actually deliver will start to matter a lot more. So those people who are nefarious, doing poor work, like word will spread, their channels will get like shadow banned in some respects. And then if there's a bunch of people, in not to be hypercritical, but this is the reality, if there's 100 advisors all using YouTube, sharing the exact same message, and what they're offering is effectively a subpar product, like, a client experience where you're opening your accounts with DocuSign and you're trading whole shares, your clients are effectively getting worse outcomes because of decisions that you've made around your actual tech stack and your user experience. You will lose, right, to the person who has the exact same content machine, but it's delivering the absolute best outcomes, right? So driving best outcomes, best experience will become like the differentiator. So yeah, lots of kind of stuff, whether we go down the rabbit hole there, but I think offline marketing is still like insanely good. Some of the other fastest growing firms, I know plenty of firms that are growing at 2, 3, 400 million per year or more, and they don't even use the internet at all. You wouldn't even know who these people are. I'd give you their name and you'd be like, never heard of that advisor. They never go to conferences. They don't use social media. They're just grinding it out, like not in a bad way. Oftentimes they're like actually working really chill hours, but like meaning like they're just doing the same thing over and over again. And they've gotten really good at it. And it's usually like some type of local marketing. So it could be a radio show, could be teaching classes or seminars. And they're just like turning off the noise. They're going doing that. And that's actually much more defensible, right? It'd be harder you have to geographically be there to compete with them in many respects. Whereas like the digital stuff, any of us could do it if you're good enough and you put the work in.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Hey, this is Judd Mackerel. Thanks for listening to this show. I just wanted to ask you one question. What's your technology and data strategy for 2025? If you can't clearly answer that question, I'd love to talk. We are spending some specific time with select firms to really go deep and help you clearly answer that question. We believe that it's one of the things that often holds back firms from really achieving their potential, from really achieving growth, and really getting a lot of the things in the position that they need to be. The things that are holding up the way that you scale, like your workflows, how you manage data around your revenue, how you report all of that to your advisors, and getting clarity in all those things. I'm sure there's a lot of very specific things to your business that are really important as well, and we'd love to talk about that. If this is interesting to you, hit me up with an email. My direct email is jud@milemarker.co, and I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, hear what your strategy is, and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you get more clear on that strategy in 2025. Thanks.
I love it, man. I love how open you are about all of this stuff and how free you share it. All right, I want to tie these two things together. You started to talk about Altruist. It's where I wanted to go next. But I want to bring this back to retirement wealth, kind of formula folios and how it gets us there. So retirement wealth, you're adding 69 million in new assets from a blog post. And you were talking about the crazy volume. But you didn't have an Altruist, which can open an account in 60 seconds, verify it in real time, do all of these things. Was some of the operational burden that came from all of the growth you experienced a lot of the inspiration for why Altruist needed to exist?
Yes, I'd say there's two main drivers. So one was if you have a very fast growing firm, you feel the pain of operational inefficiency a lot more than someone who's only opening 4 or 5 new accounts here and there, right? But when you're opening 50 or more per day, all of a sudden, the speed at which they open and fund, the rate at which you get NIGOs, and so you get rejections, and what's the follow-up like, all those things start to be magnified. And you get to 100 a day, 200 a day. Like if you're a really high growth firm, it was very painful, like the way that old custodians worked. Even if they had APIs to help you fill out their DocuSign forms, you were doing some form of Six Sigma aspirational operational planning, you could only go so far, right? And so Formula Folios was a whole different animal. When we launched that, it basically was now a B2B2C. So we were helping advisors build their digital marketing funnels. And then when they won clients, helping them with onboarding, opening accounts, funding, asset allocation, management, ongoing performance reporting, fee billing, et cetera, et cetera. So we were doing this whole kind of nose to tail kind of view of work and doing it like more B2B2C. So naturally, the volume was a lot higher. And we got to the point where doing a couple $100 million in a month of new assets was not uncommon. And yeah, it was high degrees of pain. So I always try to caution advisors. They'll always like, act, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just selling my book here. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I was doing what you're doing. I got very good at it. I reached one of the highest levels of scale you get to in terms of organic growth in the industry. And that it drove me so crazy, I sold my company. So that was one, was the operational inefficiencies. But the second was actually the economics. I was looking at the world and just going, I don't know when it will happen, but I just felt like there will be a day that we will all have to work for less revenue than we do on a relative basis from that day. So it started with mostly our vendors. So funds and ETFs got cheaper. Now they're almost to zero. A lot of vendors are pretty affordable now. I mean, you guys work with every fintech company basically that matters in the industry. So you have a good idea of what are they charging. And SaaS is largely pretty affordable, like whether it's planning or portfolio accounting or CRM, these are reasonably well priced. And I don't know how much cheaper they can get, in other words. In advisors, like there's only they can only get to a certain level of efficiency. And if you measured it in basis points, and you thought about it in terms of COGS, you could say, I knew what my metrics were. I was like, I had a 30-person engineering team building a lot of our own internal tools to try to optimize our efficiency. And I still looked at it and I was like, I don't know, like, I feel like there's a terminal like price that if we go below, we're out of business. We're not going to be around anymore. And I felt like most of the reason for that OpEx kind of having a floor, I guess, like that was high, too high, was because of my custodians. I was like, they were the place where, like, as you're stitching things together, they typically were the most antiquated. Like they weren't built in the last even 20 or 30 years. Most of them were 50 to 70 years old, kind of mainframe technologies, heavily reliant on paper. Even if they digitized the paper, these were still paper, which is different than real-time processing. They had a lot of limitations on how you could manage money. So all sorts of bizarre backdoor things advisors don't think about in terms of why do they only offer whole shares? It's because it drives more cash, which drives more cash spread. If you want to have less cash, you can use things like mutual funds, but mutual funds have all these bizarre things that aren't even in the prospectus. It's like hard to even know what the distribution fees are on these things. Like the 12B1 only tells a very small portion of the story of like how these things get distributed. Tons of asset classes with like not even disclosed revenue share agreements, a lot of the alts. And so I just looked at this space and I'm like, man, and that's the cornerstone of most asset-based pricing in the RIA spaces. Like it's your custodian, like all the other stuff is helpful, but it only takes you so far if the limiting factor is the core base infrastructure. I just kind of looked at that and I thought, if I want to get even better than what we're doing, and for it's worth, the old company is $12 billion in assets, growing nicely, super profitable, killer company, right? I could have kept doing that. I guess like now with these PE prices, I could sell that business for like $1 billion now and whatever. But I just viewed it as like, that wasn't my goal. My goal was like, help as many people as you can, make it affordable for more people to get access to planners. And we're not going to do that if the whole industry is trying to grind out 1 or 2 or 3 basis points of efficiencies when the custodian is sitting there holding 20, 30, 40, 50 basis points. Like they can't, not in terms of their revenue, but like they're limiting the net output effectively for the end consumer. And a lot of that's because like they're driving the cost higher for advisors. They're limiting advisors' ability to serve more people because you have these sort of time constraints, because of how operationally complex things are. And frankly, they're making like really high efficacy investment management quite challenging because of their embedded interests around their own financial model. So that was the genesis, right? Like, how can we remove the pain that happens when you reach high scale? And then also, how can we unlock the efficiencies so that firms can survive in a world where, what if AI takes a ton of our jobs? What if a lot of consumers that are Gen Z and Gen Y decide that they're totally fine, like with a non-personal AI advisor? They don't need the emotional coaching and connection. I don't know if these things will happen, when they'll happen, how they'll happen. But if I'm a human advisor, I want every advantage I can possibly have to build like an insanely good business and produce tons of value to my clients.
Yeah. Well, the perfect segue again. So I wanted to ask you about everything you just talked about in combination with, you guys just made an acquisition and then you launched Hazel, which is AI assistant, I think is the best way to say it. It's not really a note taker. It's not really just an agent. It's, hey, taking the data from Altruist and trying to apply an AI lens to it, but I'll let you talk about it. I know you're pretty excited about this and you guys have been making some noise.
Thanks. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we acquired a company called Time, and they were just a few person startup, a YC backed startup, but the team is really talented, working super hard, and kind of helped us. We had our own internal AI team and just helped us like get faster, if you will. So awesome people. The co-founders, Daniel and Fernando, are fantastic and part of our core team now. Yeah, look, I think it's pretty crowded if you're just building a note taker. I saw the post from Joe Moss the other day. I was like, well, here's 27 of them. I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of note takers. The thing though about note taking is it's like it's an obvious thing that every single advisor should be leveraging. To me, I'm like, if you're not using one, like why? Like, what are you afraid of? Obviously, there's a lot of different flavors, so you can find one that meets like your security protocol. But I view it much as the same as Zoom or Google Meet or Teams or whatever. Like, if you're an advisor and you're not using video conferencing, what are you doing? And at least something that at minimum is doing your note taking Of course, everyone should have that. Now, that is now, I think, kind of table stakes, which is why there's 27, probably will be 30 by the end of this month, and who knows, 50 by the end of this year. And eventually it'll just be something that's embedded into every kind of key product. It won't really be a standalone product. It'll just be something that's embedded, and hopefully it's really high quality. But our view really is like that the real work is if you can do the work of a human being and not just taking notes. So of course, the AI is actually probably better. It can take, listen, create a transcript, take great notes with the right template and the right context. It can be incredibly helpful and powerful. I use ours all the time. Every meeting, basically, Hazel's my buddy that does a lot of the heavy lifting for me. But the real work is, okay, if I hired a great assistant, let's say you're creating a rec, right? You're going to post a job. You would never post a job that just says, I would like someone to sit in my meetings and take excellent notes and then draft follow-ups, but doesn't actually do anything, doesn't do any of the work, just creates more notes, more follow-ups for me to do. What you really want is you'd want an assistant that in a perfect world did things so that you didn't have to do them anymore. So this could be something like a client reaches out and asks you, hey, it's getting late in the year. What's my RMD again this year? Have I taken it? How much is it for the year? And really, a good employee they wouldn't bother you with it. Like they would just go and get the information. Now, in order to get the information, they'd have to have a lot of information, and they'd have to have it be from a source of truth. And the source of truth in this case would be your custodian, not any other thing, just your custodian. Because custodian is a place that has the client's date of birth. It knows who their beneficiaries are, if it's relevant who the beneficiaries are, if it is, who the beneficiaries' ages, if there's been money that's come out of it or not, how it was tagged in a system, did they do things like a Roth conversion? It knows all these details, right? So it can very easily kind of assess all of this data set and then go back to the client and say, yep, you need to take out $8,000 this year. You've not taken anything out so far, so you can either do it in one lump sum or you could do it monthly over the next 4 months, $2,000 a month. Would you like me to help you with that? Again, a great assistant then, the client comes back, maybe writes back via email. That would be amazing, if you could set up my RMDs, and I'm good just getting it before the end of the year, so no rush, right? The AI assistant, again, just like a good non-licensed assistant, isn't going to actually go sell some securities and then send the money out. But what it's going to do is let you know now, the advisor, that here's all the conversations that have been had, and here's the dollar amount, and here's my recommendation. It might even say, historically, it's always better to give the money as much time in the year as possible for compounding and tax benefits. And so would you like me to set a reminder, Kyle, for you to process this distribution on December 15th? Advisor only has to say, this all looks good. And yes, sure. December 15 rolls around, AI, the great assistant, surfaces, hey, just wanted to remind you have to make sure you get this done. I've went ahead and populated all of the required, in like Altruist case, right? It'd be like, I went ahead and pre-built the distribution request in the Altruist system. You can quickly review and hit submit. Advisor reviews, hit submit, goes out to the client, gets the notification. Hey, here's your RMD. It's going to be for $8,000. Here's the withholding. Does everything look okay? Client authorizes it, right? You've done everything legally you need to. There's no like somebody doing something they shouldn't, but this is what a good human assistant. Now, multiply that times like the hundreds of things that happen when you're trying to grow a client base and prospects, booking meetings, prepping you for those meetings when they're a prospect, gathering data. So if it's like a paraplanner, maybe there's 25 different things you want to make sure you do for every client, for everything from analyzing all of their key risks around risk-based insurance to making sure their portfolio's right, making sure that their savings rate, that their financial plan is done right. Again, a note taker doesn't do any of this stuff, right? Like they're going to make you do a bunch of work, do a bunch of meetings, gather a bunch of things, and then they're going to take the data points. But the right agents will actually go do things. So you'd call this kind of like resolution-based AI versus task-oriented AI. And this is very similar, like if you're thinking about like customer support, we've all worked with customer support agents, whether it's a chat or a voice, whatever. If you work with an agent, you want fast resolution. Like you want it to be complete and done for you, and you want it to be insanely good, insanely fast, insanely affordable. So this is the way we think about building these agents. So right now, like our first agent's a general purpose assistant. Think of it as like your EA, can do a bunch of stuff for you, scheduling appointments, responding to emails, automatically having drafts in your email, Outlook, whatever you use, they're ready to go. Obviously taking notes, creating to-do lists, reminding you of things in the future, parsing through documents, like all of the kind of stuff. That's what's in market right now. It's still in beta. We'll launch it here shortly, like publicly. And then hopefully before the end of the year, we'll launch our paraplanner, which will be pretty insane because that's going to be a heavily outbound agent where you can turn it on scan all of your clients' financial plans, all of your clients' past meeting notes, emails, et cetera. And it might be able to do things like tell you, hey, Kyle, I went ahead and looked at every single client that you have, and I've identified 14 clients where we're actually missing quite a few things in our pledge to do remember our 25 things we promised we'd do for every client? We're missing quite a few. So I wanted to flag them and tell you what they are, and then ask your permission. Can I go ahead and reach out to these clients and see if I can gather that info for you so we can make good on our pledge to do these 25 things? And now they can go out and very easily collect that homeowner's insurance declaration page, very easily get the update on the client's 401k. Then have the social security number for that grandchild to be able to open up that 529. But I know that they wanted to do it 30 days after the grandchild was born. So you can go reach out with the message, provide the secure link to go to, now provide the data. The data now goes in this data engine. From there, you can query it. You can do things like send the data to your financial planning software or actually just do the queries. So all of this is like, I think, what I would want, right? If I'm a practitioner, I want to have the absolute best possible client experience and outcomes, and I want it at the lowest possible cost with the highest amount of satisfaction. This is what will drive better economics for my business, which would allow me to effectively serve more people better, perhaps even cheaper if I wanted to. So that's kind of where we're going with our agents. We'll do some more next year's. The current planned third agent, though no work's been done on it yet, just kind of ideation, is an investment analyst. So to very specifically to look out and help you optimize every client's kind of investment portfolio, just find opportunities for fee savings and tax savings, coordination of assets across held away and maybe managed assets and so forth. So just giving you that extra set of like eyes and ears that's always on and can help make sure that no little detail gets missed from how you think about deploying your asset management strategy. So that's the Altruist AI plan. I mean, we're pretty transparent about it. And obviously I'm heavily biased here, but I think you need your custodian to be playing a part in this stuff if you want to get the maximum value out of your AI, because like their data is pretty critical, right? So you get your custodian to get the data to Milemarker, and then you can orchestrate that right across all the other applications. That's far more useful, especially if you can then push back like to their APIs commands. Hey, we found this opportunity, push it back, and now you can agentically get things done. And so we definitely we want to be the leader in kind of helping advisors with access to data and agentic actions being able to be done rather than being one that holds you back.
I love it. We could probably talk for another couple hours, but for today's sake, we're starting to run out of time. So I want to move into the final segment of our show, which is what we call the Milemarker Minute. It's a series of lightning round questions, just aimed to get to know you a little bit better before we sign off. So are you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
100%. Let's go for it.
All right, let's go. All right, if you could travel anywhere in the world you've never been to before, where would you go?
Oof, sheesh. I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. Been to Australia, but not New Zealand yet. So
that's number 2 on my bucket list. So I'm with you. I think that's a great place. A great answer. What is the best book you've read or listened to in the last year?
This is maybe controversial to say, but I really enjoyed the Elon Musk biography. It like helped me understand why the guy's such a maniac and loses his mind every few months. But I thought it was really, really well done.
What is your go-to running shoe brand?
I've made this switch. I'm old and I had to give up my Nikes. I tried Hoka for a while, but now I'm full bore into On running. So I use the On Super Cloud Trail is what I'm on these days.
I love it. What's the best flavor of ice cream?
Those who know me well know that I don't eat sugar really of any kind. So I'm the worst person that you could ever ask these things. But if I was to go down that road, I'm from Michigan and we have an ice cream in Michigan called Superman, which is it's like pink and yellow and blue. And I don't even know what the flavors are. It's probably full of all of the red dyes that we're not supposed to have and blue dyes we're not supposed to have. But as a kid, I loved me some Superman.
I love it. All right. And then last question for you. So there's an alternate universe. So in this one, Jason Wenk is founder and CEO of Altruist. In this alternate universe, you have a totally different career. What are you doing in that other universe?
I've always worked in, I'd say, a pretty intangible industry. Like financial services is quite intangible. Software is quite intangible in many respects. There's something that is like, at least in my mind, very romantic about just selling an actual physical good. So I don't know what it would be, but I feel like I've always wanted to have a thing where I make a thing and I sell the thing. And it could be something as simple as like I make candles and sell the candles or whatever. Maybe a better fitting one for me would be like make olive oil, grow olive trees, harvest olives, make some pressed olive oil. Maybe that's what I'll do someday. Who knows?
I would be a customer. Jason, this was amazing, man. Thank you so much. Again, I feel like we barely scratched the surface and you dropped so many insights. I had a long list of questions I didn't even get to. So we'll have to have you back for a round 2 at a certain point in the future. But thank you so much for all of the knowledge you shared about growing an RIA, a lot of the impetus for what they should be thinking about from a custodial perspective, from AI, from automation. It's an exciting time in the industry, and it's cool to see where you guys are sitting at it.
So kind. It was a pleasure. And sorry about me being so verbose and limiting your number of questions.
Yeah, no, there's no apology needed, man. The verbosity, I don't know what the word is there, was full of gems. And so as our mutual friend Tyrone Ross would always say, free jewelry all over the place that people just got to pick up. So thank you so much.